Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're about to unpack something truly staggering, the human body. Today, we're scaling our perspective from the perfectly choreographed division of single cells all the way up to massive, interwoven organ systems. And we're capping it all off with the ultimate meta-learning cheat code to actually help you encode all this complexity.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the cell cycle and mitosis, then scale up to the 11 organ systems, see how they balance through homeostasis, and wrap up with exactly how to learn anatomy effectively.
All right, part 1. The cell cycle and mitosis, basically our microscopic blueprint. You know, it's really easy to picture cells just constantly splitting all the time, but actually division is the exception. A cell spends the vast majority of its life in what we call interphase. Think of it like a really rigorous biological QA process. It's growing, it's synthesizing DNA, and it's running these strict error-checking checkpoints just to make sure it's flawlessly prepared before it even attempts to divide. Now, during interphase, DNA exists as chromatin. Basically, it's this messy, tangled ball of genetic data inside the nucleus. But here's the thing. You can't cleanly split a tangled mess without breaking it, right? So, before division, that messy chromatin tightly coils up into those iconic, neat, X-shaped chromosomes. It's literally like packing a messy room into neat moving boxes before you relocate. Okay, once everything is neatly packed, we enter mitosis. This PMAT timeline is an absolute mechanical masterpiece. First, in prophase, the nuclear membrane dissolves and chromosomes condense. Then, metaphase, where they align perfectly down the middle. In anaphase, spindle fibers act like microscopic tow cables, yanking the halves apart. And finally, telophase, where the nucleus reforms and the cells elongate. It's this highly choreographed dance that perfectly distributes your genetic blueprint. Moving right along to part 2, the 11 organ systems, or how we actually build the body. Look, trying to memorize a raw list of 11 different systems is just a recipe for burnout. The real trick here? Categorize them functionally. We've got physical architecture, control centers, an internal supply chain, resource management for absorption and excretion, and, of course, reproduction. Grouping this data by its actual job makes the whole thing instantly intuitive. But knowing those functional groups is really just the start. To truly grasp the human blueprint, we have to map it out spatially. Like, where does all this machinery actually sit inside of you? Well, tracing top-down creates a really great spatial map. Your nervous system's command center, the brain, is locked safely up in the head cavity. Drop down to the center of your chest and you hit the heart, the cardiovascular system's main transport pump. Keep descending down into the right abdomen, and there's your massive liver handling digestive absorption, with the tiny green gallbladder tucked neatly right underneath it. Which brings us to part 3, balance through homeostasis, the ultimate balancing act. So, with a dozen systems running at full tilt, the body desperately needs a regulator. Think of homeostasis kind of like balancing a ruler vertically on the tip of your finger. It's almost never perfectly still. It leans left, it leans right, and you have to make these tiny, rapid corrections to maintain that vertical set point. Well, your body is executing that exact same balancing act every single second to maintain a stable internal environment. To actually pull off those corrections, your body relies on a brilliant 3-step negative feedback loop. First, receptors sense a deviation from the set point. Second, the brain integrates that data, comparing it against the ideal condition. And third, signals are sent to an effector organ to make a physical correction. Sense, integrate, effect. It's simple, but incredibly powerful. Now, this actually leads to a massive misconception. People very often think that raising low blood pressure is positive feedback just because the numbers are going up. No way. In reality, both of those scenarios are negative feedback loops. Whether your body is slowing the heart to lower blood pressure or speeding it up to raise it, it's doing the exact opposite of the initial deviation to get back to normal. We see this exact same opposition with temperature too. Drift above that ideal 37 degrees Celsius set point and your hypothalamus triggers sweating to drag you back down. Drop below 37 and it triggers shivering to force you back up. It is a relentless automatic pursuit of balance. All right, final section, part 4, how to learn anatomy, basically the master-student approach. Let's be real for a second. Staring at textbook tables for hours on end is a guaranteed path to burnout. It's passive, and honestly, cognitively, it just doesn't stick. True learning means you have to stop trying to brute force rows and columns.
Instead, you need to actively translate that data into an interconnected mental picture. To build that picture, you really need to lean into the core verbs of active encoding. Simplify complex tables into basic shapes. Compare similar items to find the exact differences. Connect relationships between origins, insertions, and bones. And group similar concepts together so you just memorize less overall. When you apply these, you aren't just reading, you're actively restructuring the info so your brain can actually hold on to it. Let me show you what I mean using the quadriceps. Instead of agonizing over 4 totally separate textbook rows, apply our core verbs. Group them. When we break it down, you'll recognize that all 4 of these muscles share the exact same insertion point at the tibial tuberosity and patella, and they all perform the exact same action, extending the knee. By just finding that pattern, you've instantly cut your memorization workload by 75%. Seriously, it's a biological cheat code. Of course, doing this translation takes real effort. Drawing ugly stick figure skeletons, scribbling out mistakes, that isn't failing. Learning is supposed to look messy. That cognitive friction you feel when you're trying to map out a muscle, that is the literal biological process of encoding data into your long-term memory. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to challenge you. Ditch the passive reading and embrace that friction. The next time you sit down with this material, how are you going to simplify, compare, connect, and group your way to mastery? What interconnected picture will you draw during your next study session?